Hello everyone, welcome back to, well, it's not another episode of Talks with my mum, it's Talks with Jackie Legs, A.K.A. Jack Fordham.
I am Jackie Legs, and I'd like to say hello.
Lovely friend of mine, beautiful man, who has recently been recording and putting out new music. And basically what we're going to do is just talk about the peaks and troughs of like trying to be creative throughout lockdown, but just and the process of Jack's kind of like own creative stimulus throughout lockdown as well, and just like how he's found it in terms of just producing music and just kind of getting back to being his creative self. So here we are.
Heal me, fucking God! Heal me, fucking God!
Where did it all kind of like start then? Just in terms of like, where was it during lockdown that you were like, right, I need to kind of like get back into like a focus, or where did you find the new focus?
I suppose it was a gradual thing, I think, in terms of like the creativity, because poetry's not really, and this kind of creative practice I'm doing now, it's not something I've ever done before. And I just found as lockdown kicked in, and I had like 2 weeks where I was self-isolating off work, so I was like proper just locked down in the house, and I just found this release, like, because it was such a confusing and scary time. I mean, it still is, you know, we've just got used to it, haven't we? But like, it really helped me to kind of funnel out the feelings and thoughts I was having about the broader societal effects of what was going on, like the isolation and the impact on just broader society and our way of life. I kind of, when it was all just kept in my head, it was just kind of overwhelming, and it was too much to really think about. And I kind of found this, like, I've always kind of journaled, but I've started to find my writing when I was doing journaling was just becoming more creative, and it started to feel more like, oh, this is like almost like a piece of work rather than just like me rambling about my thoughts and feelings and stuff. And then that became like a kind of daily thing that I was doing each day, like writing a different poem. And then I started sort of getting more and more excited about it, and I was thinking, actually, this is like a new thing that I've never done before that I'm really thoroughly enjoying. So like when I used to write songs, like traditional sort of songs, like the sort of format of the words to make them work in a song, like the rhyme and the meter and stuff, I just found it so like limiting, and I could never get the message out I was trying to say, because I was trying to think about the way it flows in the song and the words and the rhyming scheme and things like that. And it's just like, I find myself focusing more on making it sound good than like the point of the song. Whereas with this, it was just like completely free form. Like, I don't know anything about poetry. I don't read poetry. I'm not particularly a fan of it.
Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on. Go play. Hey now, you're a rock star. Get the show on. Get paid.
See, I find that the hardest thing, like I totally get that with poetry, because it's like you have like a predetermined idea of like what poetry should be, and it needs to be like this absolutely belting like sonnet and just like da 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 da.
I dance around a Mexican hat. I dance, and that's the end of that.
And like this is beautiful little rhyme and thing, and like sometimes you just kind of get like, you force yourself into like a corner when you're writing, because you're like, oh shit, that doesn't rhyme. I'm gonna have to go back and change that, or like you just think I'm getting nothing, like I can't rhyme anything with orange, so holy shit, like that's that one scrap then. What was that?
Door hinge.
Door hinge, orange door hinge.
That's close to door hinge.
That'll do.
Is there any more orange juice?
Orange. But yeah, like you just kind of, you force yourself into this idea of like, this is what poetry should be.
Yeah.
Where I think some people are maybe natural poets, and other people kind of fall into, say, like things like spoken word, or I felt like I did, where you don't necessarily need that structure of rhyme and reason as much as you just kind of like need it to just evoke how you feel at the time in this like really kind of like powerful and emotive way.
Help me! I'm feeling...
So the recent music you created, which was kind of touched on, the Black Lives Matter movement, what was kind of like the reasoning for kind of like following that route and kind of wanting to kind of utilize your new like spoken word approach to music like with that?
I think part of it comes down to the fact that I've always struggled to get the message out, whatever my message is. I can't get it out in song form because it feels too difficult to really express myself. So I've kind of, as I've found this new way to express myself with spoken word, with this new kind of like just free form, not so focused on rhymes and meter and things like that. As I was doing that, I suddenly found that I could kind of intersect it with my interests on writing about, you know, social commentary and what's going on in the world, and looking at things like I love trying to write things that encapsulate the broad picture of what's going on at the moment, because I think there's so much going on in the world, like there's just so much information, so much change, so much shift. It's almost impossible to hold on to anything because nothing stands still for one moment. Everything's out of date by the time it reaches you.
Explosion.
So I love like trying to capture a snapshot of a moment, and I think that was my motivation for the song, this particular song, of kind of like just capturing my experience from being at the like a Black Lives Matter protest, and the imagery that kind of stayed with me the next few days, and the sort of thoughts that it brought up. And when you listen to the song, I don't think, for me anyway, I don't think it's not hugely obvious whether I'm saying Black Lives Matter is good or bad, if you can really minimise it to that like polarity. It's just exploring this narrative of this like young guy at a protest who I noticed on, you know, like protesting against the Black Lives Matter movement, and my sort of thoughts of like, why would someone do that? What's their real motivation? Like, is it really from a hateful perspective, or is it to do with just sort of like a kind of, you know, how much has misinformation got to play here, and like social media siloing? And
you know, it's interesting. I always think it's nice, like empathy is like such a huge thing, and like being able to kind of like empathise with like opposing groups, even if you don't agree with what they are saying or what they're believing, like to kind of have that perspective kind of gives you a more rounded viewpoint of like, well, you know, like it's nice to just be able to understand like you know the two faces of the same coin, basically.
No, you've touched on something there that I've maybe haven't even necessarily realised it was an intention of mine, but like I guess kind of the point of it is it's so easy to demonise the people who are on the other side of whatever argument it is you're on, because that's what we're encouraged to do nowadays. Everyone says like we're so polarised, you know, you're either on the left or the right, you're blue or you're red, Conservative, Labour, whatever. We're encouraged to think that way, and we're encouraged to kind of think that the people on the other side of the fence, you create, you know, straw man arguments, and you think that they must be idiots, or they must be evil, they're racists, whatever. But the thing is, I don't think that we're going to achieve any like sustainable, meaningful change to combat that polarisation by thinking that way. Like, because you have to understand that the way we see the world and is so reinforced by the way our internet is, like the algorithms and things, the way it feeds things to us, the way it feeds information to us that is based on who we are, like where we work, you know, our income, where we live, whatever. So there's a whole host of reasons why people would feel the need to go and oppose against a Black Lives Matter protest, and I don't believe in my heart that all of them. I don't even necessarily believe that most of them are there because they don't believe Black Lives Matter. I think it's much deeper than that, and I think that you know, flattening it down to that really two-dimensional view of just like, we're anti-racist, you are racist.
Like good guys, bad guys.
Exactly. Because you have to put yourself in their shoes. They obviously think that we're the bad guys.
We will get people who would listen to like what I've said, what you said, and kind of go, well, why don't you think they're racist? Of course they're racist, because it's such an emotional concept and an emotional kind of like thing to kind of get behind and talk about and speak about. But even then, like, you know, I would hate to kind of not want to kind of. I would hate to hate somebody that much that I don't want to talk to them about what's going on. That like I would find it abhorrent to kind of say like, well, let's just have a chat about this. And you know, like, why do you feel the way you do? Like, do you actually believe in this? Or is there something more to it? Because as you say, because emotion can just take you over, and you can just be like, racist.
Yeah, because
Also,
we're human beings, mate. We're tribal creatures. Like, we love to be in a group and we love to be opposing against the group. That's in our like innate nature. It always has been. And the fact, like, I was overwhelmed by the experience of being like, I've never really had that experience before. Of like, I'm on this side and we're all fucking angry, and they're on that side and they're throwing bottles at us, and swearing, and they're throwing up hand signs. And it was, I've never had such a like tribal, like ancient human
throwing
sort
up
of
hand signs.
experience.
Fuck off.
it was really overwhelming, because all of us, I've never, in that moment where bottles were flying and there was all this violence and anger in the air, and suddenly I felt so like immediately rooted in the group, and I was like, these are the guys, like, we're together. It's almost like it became like I say, tribe-like. That's the only way I can really describe it. And when,
like, as long as I'm safe with these guys, like, this is the side
and
I'm gonna be on.
And you double down on your beliefs and why you should. And everyone over there all of a sudden looks like the most evil, like neo-Nazi skinhead gang ever. But everyone over there, they all just look like dads and their sons, and they were just like white guys, you know, predominantly white guys, predominantly like middle-aged, and most of them were probably like, you know, really working class, probably had a really bad time themselves, and they're probably like, you know what, why should I celebrate Black Lives Matter when I feel like I've been forgotten by society, and, you know, Western society's done nothing for me, loads of my friends are on drugs, loads of my friends don't work, you know, the industries are failing, blah blah blah, all these different things about how the world's changing and it's not happening for them. You know, I'm not condoning at all what they believe in, but I'm just saying you've got to try and understand where they're coming from in order to help them, you know, to have a conversation about it and try and like change things.
And I like, because you brought up that bit in like your song, you could find yourself easily kind of thinking that like that's the right side, with just that kind of level of like honesty and emotion that's kind of there, because everyone can kind of like feel really emotional about the subject, be it on the right or the wrong side, and that emotion you feel, like everyone can feel. So it's kind of like you can like really like hone in on and like allow people to kind of like relate to that aspect of, also like I do wonder what these guys were thinking or what was going through their head.
But there's this guy, he's a black guy, he works with neo-Nazis and like ex-KKK members and things like that, and from what I understand of it, his whole sort of premise is just get himself in a room with the individual on their own, and they can just talk. And just through that process, because I think a lot of these people who genuinely hold the racist views that need to be challenged, it's because they're not really exposed to the truth of like the shared humanity between the two people. They have these like cartoonized negative stereotypes, and that's all they've got, because when they see people, they're looking for those stereotypes, they're looking for those things to support what they already think. But when you actually get yourself in a room with someone and you discuss it, they sort of realise that there's not really any grounds. You know, you find people saying things like, "Oh, I don't usually like black people, but you're alright," something like that, and you kind of think, well, listen to yourself. That's a complete oxymoron, because I'm black. No, I'm not black, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I've heard people say things like that before. Like, they kind of think, well, you're alright for one of them, or whatever that means. And you kind of think, well, obviously that means that your entire conception of what it means to be someone who's black, or who's gay, or who's a woman, is meaningless, because you're letting me off because you know me. So think of all the other millions of people. If you knew them, you'd probably think the same of them, but you don't know them because you're shutting your minds to understanding, you know, the difference.
And like, I mean, because I'm a big advocate for people just kind of like talking, just in terms of just kind of like getting like at peace with like their mental health and the mind and stuff like that. Like, it's like one of the simplest and surefire ways to kind of give yourself some like clarity and kind of like just a bit more of like a kind of like be a bit more kindred with like just the world, and, you know, just kind of thinking that like, you know, I do have an opinion, and whether it's right or wrong, at least I'm able to kind of like voice it and kind of like explore that. And it's just growth at the end of the day. And, you know, to not allow people to kind of like talk and explore what their views are is to kind of stop them from kind of growing and learning. And on that note, we'll end there. Do listen to Jack's new song though, because it is really powerful and really beautiful. And because it's so new, it's just kind of got that beautiful, raw aspect to it, spoken word. Who doesn't like poetry? Everyone should love it. And yes, please listen. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Jack your legs, all the best.